So great to see you. It's a little bit hot. I appreciate you stepping out of the air conditioning. I just wanted that gorgeous mosque in the background.
Well, it's just two Jewish guys talking in the steam room out here. That's what's happening.
You know, it's funny. I sent you a note today saying, are we meeting up with you in Abu Dhabi or Dubai? That's a conversation that two Jews would never in a million years have had until the Abraham Accords. And I'm standing in front of this mosque. And in the past, I would have felt trepidation. I would have said, is it a mosque where terrorism is being fomented and incubated? Instead of those feelings of fear and loathing, I have the opposite. I feel a friendship, which was offered by Dubai to the Jewish people. And I look at that now, I guess, with fresh eyes that do not have any condemnation. I look at the beautiful and ornate history and design of it, and I think, and with true belief, that it may well be possible for the Abrahamic religions, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, to actually coexist in a meaningful friendship. I don't know if I'm sounding, pie in the sky, but I think that the United Arab Emirates is sort of proof that it can happen.
Well, the proof is around us, and as you pointed out, we're here. Nobody's bothering us. We're here on a street corner, two Jewish guys who sat, maybe you sat as I did in my fourth grade Hebrew class, looking at a map of the Middle East, and there were all these forbidden countries. And some of these names on a map seemed like places I would never be able to see or visit, and yet here we are. And I actually didn't come to Dubai for many years because until a few years ago and until the Abraham Accords, they would not allow Israelis into the country, and you even had a problem if you had an Israeli stamp in your passport. That was a discriminatory policy that basically discriminated against Jews, Israelis more generally, but particularly against Jews. And they got into some trouble over it. There were some tennis tournaments. I believe there was a chess tournament once where there was an Israeli competitor who wasn't able to compete because of the fact they were from Israel. And all that changed. And it changed because the leadership of the United Arab Emirates decided to make it change. And that's, in a sense, what Jews and particularly Israelis have said for decades, that there will be peace when Arab leaders decide that the future is more important than the past. And that's happened here. And it's not just happened with regard to Israel. It's not just a change with regard to Jews or Christians. The leadership of the UAE, if you look around us, we don't see any oil drilling platforms or anything like that. And obviously this is still very much an oil-based economy and fossil fuel resources are very important. But they looked at the bigger picture, the long term, and they said, look, we can't survive on the energy industry alone. We want to become an international trade hub. We want to become a travel destination. We want to become a luxury tourist hub. And the leadership of the United Arab Emirates took their own destiny into their own hands, and they remade their country. And in so doing, they freed themselves basically to remake their relationships with the rest of the region. So that's what has happened with Israel. And the flights to and fro between Tel Aviv and Dubai now are almost like the commute from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Israelis love Dubai. They love the shopping. They love the nightlife. And there's a lot for Emiratis to discover in Israel as well. It's slightly cooler, so the weather's a little bit better, but there are also so many other things to do in Israel. Obviously, there are the holy sites, but Tel Aviv has this unique nightlife and unique outdoor culture, art, connection to Europe, connection to many different things, and Jewish culture is interesting to Muslims. I was in Abu Dhabi earlier today to visit the Abrahamic Family Mosque, which is a new development that includes a mosque, a synagogue, and a church. The Abrahamic Family House, is what it's called. And it was absolutely incredible. The architecture and the design of these buildings was amazing. But more than that, as you pointed out, the welcome that I received when I went there from the Emiratis and from others who are working there who believe that we can get back to the common Abrahamic root of all of our faiths and get to the tradition, which is right there in Genesis in the Old Testament, of Abraham welcoming guests. And that's become part of Arab tradition in the Middle East. It has been for centuries. It's also part of Jewish culture. And extending that welcome is something that we've experienced already just in the few hours we've been here. And I've been very impressed. So I'm very glad that all of this happened. And as you said, it does resolve a lot of feelings, I think, that you have as a Jewish person, because we care so much about the future of the Jewish people, which is understandable given that we were nearly wiped out within living memory. And therefore, we care a lot about Israel's survival. And all of that seems up in the air. As strong as Israel is and as powerful as it has become and as successful as it has become, it still seems vulnerable when there's a state of war with the rest of the region. And peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan have helped, but especially this very warm peace with the United Arab Emirates, which is not just a peace among leaders, but really a peace between people. It's really just changed the outlook. And we're going to see things happen in the future that we can't believe, any more than we could believe that two Jews would be standing here in front of a mosque in the middle of nighttime traffic in Dubai talking about the world. We are going to see things happen coming out of that relationship that I think will benefit everybody.
You raised a good point. Israel has had peace treaties in the past with Egypt, a very major breakthrough in the late 70s, with Jordan, but it hasn't been a warm peace. It hasn't been, we've been waiting for you. Welcome, Habibi. Come set up a synagogue. You know, I saw Bahrain. It's a small Gulf country. I don't remember it offhand, but there was some Bahraini leader who was holding a Jewish Torah or something. Like something that if you were to try that in, let's say, the West Bank or Gaza Strip, the local PLO thugs would beat you up or kill you. And it's a sign that this isn't just some paper deal. Like that is a remarkably warm gesture.
You just reminded me of something. When we went to Bethlehem, when we were in Israel, we crossed through the checkpoint and we were into a Palestinian Authority-controlled area. And the driver of our bus asked me if I had a hat. I don't know if you saw this happen, but he asked me if I had a hat. And I do have a baseball hat for the sun usually. And he told me to put it on so that my kippah, my yarmulke, would be covered. He didn't want people in Bethlehem to see that I was Jewish. And for me to come from Israel, and we had just come from the town of Hebron where we had seen the cave of the patriarchs, the tomb of the patriarchs, this very Jewish experience. And yes, that tomb is holy to Muslims and Christians as well. But, you know, to have that spiritual enmeshment in Jewish faith and then literally a few meters away cross over into a town where, even though Bethlehem is known as the town of peace, I'm getting told by the bus driver I have to cover up my religious identity and I'm in the Holy Land. And it was so jarring. So that's obviously the worst case scenario where people have to hide their faith to interact with one another. But in Dubai, again, because the leadership has taken a very different approach and they've emphasized tolerance and they've actually built institutions that emphasize tolerance. It wasn't always that way. 15 years ago, there was a huge controversy over a donation that Harvard received from one of the members, I believe, of the Emirati royal family who had very staunchly anti-Israel views. And I think Harvard returned that donation. There were some controversies over some of the anti-Israel and sometimes anti-Semitic positions of some of the leaders in this country, but they changed. That change happened. And once you have a leadership that's willing to change, as the Palestinians are not, but as the Emiratis clearly were, then you can suddenly open up all these relationships and you can build a better foundation for peace and cooperation.
You know, I think part of it is, do you want a deal to succeed? And Trump is essentially a deal maker. I mean, if you can handle real estate commerce in Manhattan, perhaps one of the most intensely competitive, cutthroat places in the world, maybe you can handle Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Palestinians. Like really, the man, like the art of the deal, he actually does know that. It's not just a slogan or a catchphrase. The guy knows how to solve problems. I think the first thing is to have a problem-solving mindset. You've got a point, but let me just throw you to a contrasting video. Here is John Kerry, who was the Secretary of State, who basically said there will be no peace deal. There will not be a peace deal if the Palestinians are dealt with first. And anyone who thinks that Israel can make peace with an Arab or Muslim country is, and listen to how emphatic he was. John Kerry, who's never had any real life experience, he's been a political hack his entire life. I can't think of anything successful he's done. He gave the whole show away to Iran in an atrocious deal. He said, no, it's impossible. But he's never done a deal before, at least not one that benefits America or the West. Here's John Kerry saying there will never be peace with the Arabs until there's peace with the Palestinians. Take a look.
There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. I've heard several prominent politicians in Israel sometimes saying, well, the Arab world's in a different place now. We just have to reach out to them and we can work some things with the Arab world and we'll deal with the Palestinians. No, 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 and no. I can tell you that, reaffirmed even in the last week as I have talked to leaders of the Arab community. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace. Everybody needs to understand that.
Well, he obviously didn't want there to be peace. Trump wanted a deal because I think he believes in peace, actually, but he also wanted to be the guy to solve the once-in-a-century problem.
When you look at Trump's career and how he made his billions, it's right there in his book, The Art of the Deal. He had a pattern in New York real estate, which was that he would look at projects other people had started and then abandoned for whatever reason. There was one project, the Hudson Yards, I think, where there was an Argentinian investor, a very wealthy guy, who had a vision for what this piece of property could be, but he didn't get the zoning regulations lined up ahead of time, and so he had to abandon it. Trump swooped in and bought him out at a very low price and then built this development and created massive amounts of wealth and value. And that is the pattern throughout Trump's real estate career, that he finds distressed properties, takes over the project at a very low price, and then creates something valuable. So the John Kerry perspective was essentially the retail perspective, if you want to put it that way, of Middle East peace, that the only peace that's acceptable is the best possible peace, which is one that includes Israel and the Palestinians and builds out from there. And there was this idea that unless you get that, you don't have anything. And Kerry really wanted to discourage anybody from thinking about it any differently. Trump came into office and tried it that way for a little while. He met with Mahmoud Abbas, the anti-Semitic leader of the Palestinian Authority, and then he realized he wasn't getting anywhere. So he said, okay, let's try something else. And essentially he took over the peace process as a distressed property. And he said, let's see if we can do this at a discount. Let's go to other people. If you allow one company to monopolize a market, you're going to pay a higher price. So the Palestinians were monopolizing peace. Trump said, I'm going to a competitor. I'm going to go talk to these other regimes. Let me talk to the Saudis. Let me talk to the Emiratis. Let me talk to the Bahrainis. Let me talk to whoever else is willing to make peace. It turned out there was a huge interest in doing so because of their self-interest. They want commercial ties to the West. They want commercial ties to Israel. And so was it the peace that everyone hopes for still, a peace between Israelis and Palestinians? No, but it provides a foundation for that future peace because it shows that there's nothing intrinsic to these cultures that means that they have to be at war. And again, if you visit the Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi, you see an incredible respect for all three of the main monotheistic faiths. There's nothing in Islam. In fact, Islam historically has been very tolerant toward Jews and Christians, both of whom are described as people of the book. There have also been wars and so forth and lots of conflict, but there are ideas in there that one can focus on and bring to the fore that encourage tolerance. And so Trump basically said, I'm going to take this distressed property and I'm going to turn it into something valuable. And it's been immensely valuable. How do you get the Palestinians on board? Well, I think it became clear in recent days when Mahmoud Abbas made another crazy anti-Semitic statement, basically blaming the Jews for the Holocaust. It's clear that he's in his 80s and he's not helping. And the Palestinian leadership is basically of that generation, the old Soviet-trained generation, the old anti-Semitic Nazi propaganda generation. There are younger Palestinians who have had to navigate the terrible world that their parents left them. And we talked to some of them when we were in Israel. We talked to Arab Israelis. Those are Arabs or Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenship, and they've had to move between these two worlds. But they are young people trying to build a better future for themselves. We talked to them at the factory in Ariel, people who actually moved from Dubai back to the West Bank to live in what we are told by the left is a horrible occupation. But for them, it was actually a place of economic potential as long as they could work with Israeli companies. There are young Palestinians who want a better life. And so I think once this present generation of Palestinian leaders leaves the stage, there will be an opening, and hopefully an opening like the one we're experiencing in Dubai.